I earn $8,000 a month and send $44,000 to my parents each month, but they always show more love and attention to my younger brother. Just 3 days before my wedding, my parents forced me to cancel it because they were planning to celebrate Ethan's birthday on the same day. I refused. In response, my mother slapped me hard and screamed, "How dare you disobey me?" I walked out of the house, vowing to take action. The very next day, I delivered a shocking surprise. Now, they were on their knees. I'm Lily, the one who's always been there for my family. For as long as I can remember, I've been the one they turned to, whether it was for financial help, emotional support, or anything else. I'm a financial analyst, earning about $88,000 a month. It's a good salary, but the reason I earn that much is because I work tirelessly, often harder than anyone I know. I've never complained about my job. I enjoy what I do, but sometimes it feels like I've spent my entire life working, not just for myself, but for my family too. Since I began working full-time, I've been sending my parents $44,000 a month. I've never asked for anything in return. I wanted them to live comfortably and enjoy life. And for years, I did this because I thought it was my duty. After all, I'm the oldest. My younger brother, Ethan, has always been the one who needed less, the one who had everything handed to him. Ethan is 5 years younger than me, but it wasn't just the age gap that made him the favorite. It was the way my parents treated him like he could do no wrong. He got everything he wanted, and every time he had a problem, they were there, while I was the one holding everything together. It started out small: better gifts, more attention, more praise for him. I'd overhear them talking about how smart and talented he was, about how he was the one who'd go places. Meanwhile, I was the sensible one, the practical one, the one expected to do my part, not make waves. And I did. For years, I kept quiet, kept giving, kept doing. I stayed out of the way. But over time, it became clear to me that Ethan was the one they really cared about. The more I gave, the more they took, and the less they noticed me. I didn't expect grand gestures of affection, but I at least expected to be seen. But I never was. It was always about Ethan, his dreams, his needs, his celebrations. Even family events were for him. I was left to handle everything else. It was frustrating, but it was the reality I had come to accept. For years, I built my life around my family's expectations. They relied on me, emotionally, financially, in every way. And at first, I didn't mind, but over time, it began to hurt. I started to feel like I was nothing more than a tool for them, a means to an end. I kept giving, but they never acknowledged it. Never once did they stop and say, "Lily, thank you." Then came David. He entered my life when I was 28. I met him at a work event, and he was unlike anyone I'd ever met. He didn't expect me to be anything other than who I was. He accepted me, without demands or conditions. He was kind, thoughtful, and supportive in ways I hadn't realized I needed. Over time, we became inseparable. We shared everything: our hopes, our struggles, the future we dreamed of. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't just Lily, the dependable one. I was Lily, a woman in love with someone who truly loved me back. 6 months ago, David and I began planning our wedding. It was the first time I'd done something purely for myself. We found the perfect venue, a beautiful spot by the water, and began making the arrangements. I was thrilled, but, of course, my family loomed over everything. A few days ago, my mom called, and everything changed. I'll never forget that call. I was sitting in my living room, finalizing the last details for the wedding, when my phone buzzed. It was my mom. Before I could say anything, she demanded, "Lily, I need you to cancel your wedding." I froze. "What, Mom? Why?" "It's Ethan's birthday that weekend," she said, as if it were obvious. "We can't have your wedding on the same day. You need to move it to next year." I was stunned. "Mom, no, we've already made all the plans. We've been working on this for months." She didn't care. "You don't understand. Ethan's birthday is more important. He needs us right now." I tried to explain, to tell her that this was my wedding, the most important day of my life, but she wouldn't listen. Then she hit me with the ultimatum: "If you don't cancel, you'll regret it. You have 24 hours. My heart raced as I stood there, the phone pressed to my ear. She was serious. I had never felt so insignificant. After everything I had done for them, this was how they repaid me, by demanding that I cancel my wedding for Ethan's birthday. I hung up the phone, trying to hold back the tears, but I was overwhelmed. This was it, the moment I realized nothing would ever change. No matter how much I gave, I would always be second to Ethan. I couldn't even describe how I felt after that call. I sat in silence, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I felt completely crushed. My whole life had been about giving, sacrificing my own desires for the sake of my family. I thought that's what being a good daughter meant. And now, when it came to my own happiness, my wedding, the most important day of my life, they wanted me to abandon it. I spent the next few hours pacing around my apartment, replaying the conversation over and over in my mind. Why was Ethan so special? Why was his birthday more important than my wedding day? All I wanted was for my family to support me for once. But no, they couldn't even do that. After I hung up with my mom, I texted David. He was at work, and I knew it would be hours before he was home. But I needed to talk to him. I needed to hear his voice. He called me immediately, and I could hear the concern in his tone. Lily, what happened? What's going on? Mom called, I said, fighting back tears. She wants me to cancel the wedding. Ethan's birthday is the same day, and she's insisting I move it to next year. She says the wedding would mess up the family's plans. She gave me 24 hours to decide. I could hear the anger in his voice. That's ridiculous. You've been planning this for months, making all the arrangements. How can they just ask you to cancel everything for Ethan's birthday? I don't know, I whispered, struggling to hold back the tears. It's not just about the wedding, it's about everything. I've spent my whole life being second to him. I've supported them financially, emotionally, and this is how they repay me. David's voice softened. Lily, you don't deserve this. You've done everything for them, and they don't appreciate it. This is your moment. Don't let them take it from you. I needed to hear those words. I needed someone to remind me that I wasn't crazy for standing up for myself. For the first time in so long, I felt seen, not just as the dependable daughter, but as a woman with dreams and desires of her own. We spent the rest of the evening talking, making plans. David didn't want me to cancel anything. He promised to support me, no matter what. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let my parents manipulate me into canceling my wedding. I had worked too hard for this, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. The next morning, I called my mom back. I wasn't going to let her control me anymore. I couldn't. I took a deep breath before dialing her number. Mom, I'm not canceling the wedding, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've made my decision. This is my wedding day, and nothing is going to change that. There was silence on the other end before she responded coldly. You're making a huge mistake, Lily. You're being selfish. This wedding isn't even about you. It's about our family. But I guess that doesn't matter to you, does it? Her words stung, but I wasn't going to let them break me. I'm sorry, Mom, but this wedding is happening. I'm not going to give up my happiness for someone else's. I've spent my whole life putting everyone else first. It's my turn now. I could hear her breathing heavily, furious. You'll regret this, Lily. You'll see. You're making a mistake. But I held firm. I'm sorry, but I'm not backing down. This is what's best for me. And with that, I hung up. I was shaking, heart racing. I had never stood up to my mom like that before. She had always controlled me. But now, I had just shattered that control. And in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need anyone's approval but my own. I didn't expect my mom to understand or be happy for me. But I wasn't doing this for her. I was doing it for myself. I needed to take back my life and finally put myself first. David and I started reworking the wedding plans. It was going to be smaller now, just close friends and a few family members who truly cared about us. No more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. No more appeasing my parents. The next day, I got a call from Aunt Lucy. She'd heard the rumors my mom had spread about David and me calling off the wedding, and she wanted to check in. Aunt Lucy had always been there for me, and she knew the truth. You don't need people like that in your life, Lily, she said. Your wedding should be about your love, not about appeasing your parents. We'll help you. I couldn't believe the support I was getting from the people who truly cared. It felt like a weight was lifting off my shoulders. That night, David and I made the rounds, reaching out to our closest friends and family. We were going to make sure the truth was known. My wedding would happen, and it would be everything I had hoped for, on my terms. As the days passed, I felt a growing sense of peace. No matter what my family did, I would make this work. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. The wedding came fast. What was meant to be a grand celebration had turned into a fight for my happiness. But I wasn't going to let my mom's manipulation take away my joy. David and I opted for a smaller ceremony, intimate, filled with people who truly cared about us. We pulled everything together in a few short days. It was tough, but I refused to let my family's drama ruin my day. This was my time. This was about David and me, our future. David was amazing. He stood by me every step of the way. He didn't just offer emotional support, he helped with the logistics, reaching out to everyone to let them know what had really happened. He showed me how much he loved me, how far he was willing to go to make sure this day was ours. With him by my side, I felt braver, stronger, and more confident than I ever had before. When the wedding day finally arrived, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. I was happy, but there was still a sadness lingering inside. The family I had given everything for, the family that should have been there to support me, wasn't. They had chosen to prioritize Ethan's birthday and their own selfishness over me. But as I stood there, looking at the faces of those who had shown up for me, the people who genuinely loved me, I realized something crucial. This was better. This was real. These were the people who wanted the best for me. They didn't show up because they had to. They were there because they cared. Aunt Lucy, Uncle Tom, and some close friends were there, along with David's family. It wasn't the lavish event I once envisioned, but it was perfect. It was true. It was mine. As we exchanged vows, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. I wasn't just marrying David that day. I was marrying my independence, my strength, my decision to choose my happiness over anyone else's expectations. The ceremony was simple, but when we said our vows, I could hear David's voice crack as he promised to love me for the rest of his life. It was real, the most beautiful moment of my life, and it was mine, on my terms. After the ceremony, we had a small reception at a cozy restaurant. There was laughter, food, music, and, above all, love. People were genuinely happy for us, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't pretending to be someone I wasn't. I wasn't hiding my feelings to keep the peace. I wasn't trying to fit into a mold my family had created for me. I was free. But that night, as I lay next to David, the gravity of what had just happened began to settle in. I knew things would never be the same with my family. They had made their choice, and I had made mine. And now, I wasn't willing to let their manipulation control my life anymore. I was done. The next morning, as we prepared for our honeymoon, my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. I could see she had texted me multiple times, but I didn't want to read it. I was done with the drama. Yet, curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the text. It was a simple, angry message. "You've made a huge mistake, Lily. You've embarrassed the family. Don't expect us to help you when you fail." The words stung, but they didn't hurt like they used to. It was just the same old attempt to control, to guilt me into submission. But this time, I didn't care. I had made it clear to myself that I was done living for their approval. I was done living for anyone but myself. I deleted the message without responding. I wasn't going to let them drag me down. David and I were starting a new chapter in Dallas, and I was going to make it my own. We were free from the toxic hold of my family, and I felt lighter than I had in years. That wedding day wasn't just a new beginning for David and me, it was the day I stopped allowing others to define my life. It was the day I chose myself. The days after the wedding passed in a blur, but as I settled into my new life with David, something shifted inside me. It wasn't just about being married, it was about transforming into a version of myself that no longer needed my family's approval. I was finally choosing myself. David and I moved to Dallas soon after the wedding, seeking a fresh start far away from the constant drama and pressure of my family. We found a cozy apartment in a quiet neighborhood, and slowly, we began creating the life I had always dreamed of. It was peaceful, it was ours, it was everything I had wanted. But even in this new chapter, the past had a way of creeping in. Just days after settling in, I received another message from my mom. This one was even more aggressive than before. She accused me of abandoning my family, turning my back on them, and once again tried to make me feel guilty. I didn't even read the entire message. I already knew it was the same guilt trip, the same manipulative tactics, but this time, I was strong enough to ignore it. I deleted the message without hesitation and moved on with my day. For the first time, I didn't feel that old weight of obligation pulling me down. I knew I had made the right choice. David noticed the change in me too. He could see the relief in my eyes. "I'm proud of you, Lily," he said one evening as we sat on the balcony of our apartment, gazing at the city lights. "You've come so far. You've built a life that's truly yours. You're finally free. His words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I had been carrying around until it was all gone, the pressure to please my parents, the constant frustration of being second to Ethan, the emotional manipulation. It had all been so heavy, but now, I was free. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had my own life, my own happiness, and that was all that mattered. Weeks passed, and life began to feel more like what I had always imagined. David and I grew even closer, talking about our hopes for the future, starting a family, building our careers, and always supporting one another. I knew I was where I was meant to be. Then, one afternoon, I received a call from my cousin Jake. He had heard about the wedding and everything that had happened with my parents. He called to apologize on behalf of the family. "I don't know why they did that to you, Lily," he said. "You deserve so much better than how they treated you. I'm really sorry." I hadn't expected an apology, and honestly, I didn't think I needed it. But hearing it from Jake, someone who had always been kind to me, made me realize that there were still people who cared about me, who saw me for who I truly was. As months passed, I began to rebuild relationships with a few family members who had always supported me: Aunt Lucy, Uncle Tom, and some good friends. They were the ones who truly mattered. They hadn't tried to control me, and I hadn't been just an emotional or financial support to them. These relationships grew stronger, but I knew one thing: my relationship with my parents would never be the same. I couldn't forget what they had done. They had tried to manipulate me into canceling my wedding, and they had always placed Ethan above me, no matter how much I wanted to fix things. I knew deep down I couldn't return to that toxic cycle. One day, I saw a message from my mom. It was simple: "I miss you, Lily, please call me." I stared at the screen, the familiar tug of guilt pulling at me, but I knew what I had fought for. I had chosen my happiness, my independence. I wasn't going back. I replied, "I'm happy with the life I've built. I can't go back to what it was. I need to move forward." In that moment, I felt peace. I had made the choice to let go of the past, and as I looked at my life with David, I knew I was truly free. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself, and that was worth everything.